When we talk about making a woman want you, especially one who shows no initial interest, most men rush to the wrong conclusion. They believe desire is something you chase, something you convince someone to feel, something you perform for. But true desire, real, lasting, magnetic attraction, begins long before you ever say a word to her. It begins with presence, not persuasion. Presence. There is something powerful about a man who knows how to occupy his own space without apology. A man who doesn't shrink to be liked, doesn't overextend himself to be chosen, and doesn't lose himself in the process of seeking someone else's validation. Women feel that. They sense it before you even speak. Female psychology is deeply responsive to energy, not the loud kind, not the boastful kind, but the grounded kind, the kind that says, I know who I am and I am at peace with that. Most men chase, and in chasing they communicate that they have nothing worth coming toward. They communicate lack, fear, insecurity, and scarcity. You cannot inspire desire from a place of desperation. You can only inspire it from a place of emotional abundance. When you stand firm in who you are, when your presence communicates stability, direction, and quiet confidence. A woman's attraction does not awaken because you try harder. It awakens because she feels something different around you than she feels around most men. She feels your patience, your depth, your ability to exist without needing her attention to validate your worth. And the irony is that when you stop trying to win interest, you create the exact conditions that allow interest to grow. Think about someone who walks into a room and immediately shifts the atmosphere, not because they're loud, but because they are centered. They're connected to themselves. They look around not to seek approval, but to understand their environment. They speak thoughtfully. They move intentionally. They are fully present with the moment, not anxiously planning the next one. That kind of presence is rare. That kind of presence is magnetic. Presence is not about trying to impress. It's about being grounded in your truth. It's about showing up whole. When a woman encounters a man who is not intoxicated by the need to be chosen, she begins to see him differently. Curiosity begins, respect begins. And from respect, attraction has room to grow. When you are secure within yourself, you don't need to run after potential. You don't fear silence. You don't panic when someone doesn't immediately respond with interest. Because you understand that the right connection does not require force, it simply requires alignment. A woman cannot feel drawn to you if you are not rooted in yourself. She cannot admire you if you are not living from a place of inner authority. And she cannot desire you if your entire identity depends on her approval. So begin with presence. Begin with becoming the man who does not chase, but chooses. The man who does not beg for attention, but commands it through authenticity and inner strength. Because in the end, attraction is not something you create. It is something you embody. And when you learn to embody presence, you become someone who does not need to chase desire, because desire naturally comes to you. Curiosity is one of the most underestimated forces in human attraction, yet it is the spark that pulls a woman's attention out of indifference and into awareness. When a woman feels she already knows who you are, when your behavior is predictable, consistent in a flat way, or shaped entirely around her reactions, she stops looking in your direction, not because you lack value, but because nothing about you activates her sense of emotional discovery. And human beings, by nature, desire what feels fresh, intriguing, and layered. What draws a woman toward a man she once overlooked is not a list of perfect traits. It is not even effort. It is unpredictability, but not the chaotic kind. It is the subtle unpredictability that comes from a man who is growing, evolving, surprising himself first and the world around him naturally. When you break your own patterns, you break the pattern in her mind that told her she already had you figured out. There's something deeply compelling about a man who can't be placed into a simple category. A man who shows depth in conversation one day, chooses silence the next. A man who laughs easily but carries himself with purpose. A man who can be warm without being needy, ambitious without being arrogant, available without being accessible to everyone. It's that balance, that emotional complexity, that piques her curiosity. Because curiosity is born from contrast. When you shift something in your life, your goals, your habits, your social circle, your sense of direction, you shift the way she perceives you. She begins to wonder what else she missed. She questions her initial assessment. She becomes aware of you in a new way because you are no longer operating from a script she could predict. You've stepped outside the version of yourself she once ignored. And this is important. Curiosity is not something you manipulate. It is something you generate by becoming more of yourself. When you live from a place of genuine evolution, improving your mindset, elevating your standards, refining your emotional presence, you naturally become intriguing. People are drawn to movement. People are attracted to growth. A woman becomes interested not because you try to catch her attention, but because she notices the shift in your energy, your rhythm, your purpose. When you stop repeating the same emotional patterns, you create space for her imagination to engage. And once a woman begins imagining you differently, desire is already beginning its quiet work. Female psychology responds deeply to novelty. The emotional kind, the kind that says you are unfolding rather than staying static. So don't seek to impress her. Seek to transform yourself. Seek to surprise yourself. Seek to become a man whose presence evolves with time, whose story develops chapter by chapter. Because the moment she can no longer predict you is the moment she begins to pay attention. And when you learn to cultivate healthy unpredictability, rooted in growth, not games, you give her something irresistible, a reason to look again, and a reason to wonder what she might discover if she keeps looking. When you understand what truly motivates a woman at an emotional and psychological level, you begin to realize that attraction isn't about impressing her, it's about creating a space where she feels something real when she's around you. And this is where emotional leadership comes in. Not dominance, not control, not pressure, but leadership rooted in grounded energy and inner stability. Because a woman is not drawn to a man simply because he says the right things or behaves perfectly in every situation. She's drawn to the man whose presence calms her, challenges her, awakens her, and ultimately allows her to relax into her feminine energy without fear. You see, emotional leadership is about being the steady hand in a world full of noise. It's about being the man who can hold himself together even when life throws uncertainties his way. Women pay attention to that. They feel it long before they logically understand it. It's not something you announce, it's something you embody. A woman senses when she's with a man who knows who he is. She senses when he's in alignment with his values, when he treats himself with respect, when his boundaries aren't just rules he talks about, but lived realities. And when she sees that, she instinctively wants to move closer, because emotional leadership gives her something rare: security without confinement, strength without aggression, direction without force. One of the greatest misunderstandings is believing that emotional leadership means fixing her problems or carrying her emotional world on your shoulders. That's not leadership, that's emotional self-abandonment. Real leadership is the ability to remain centered when emotions rise, to stay patient when she feels overwhelmed, to listen from a place of genuine presence rather than rushing to be the hero. Sometimes a woman doesn't need you to solve anything. She needs to feel that you're not going anywhere while she works through what she feels. That steadiness becomes magnetic. It builds trust, deepens connection, and signals to her that she's safe to express herself without judgment. And here's the truth many men overlook. Emotional leadership inspires attraction because it separates you from the majority of men who rely on external validation or performative confidence. You stop trying to get her attention and start creating a reality where she naturally wants to be close to you. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop reacting and start responding. And the more aligned you become with your own emotional center, the more she feels something shift inside herself. She begins to see you as a man she can follow emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. At the end of the day, attraction is not about being perfect, it's about being rooted. It's about being the kind of man who doesn't collapse under pressure, who doesn't lose himself in the noise of insecurity, who doesn't try to overpower a woman to feel strong. True strength is quiet, it's stable, it's deeply felt rather than loudly shown. And when a woman encounters that level of grounded presence, something inside her recognizes it immediately. She knows she's standing in front of a man who leads not with ego, but with depth. And that kind of leadership doesn't just attract her, it stays with her. Because in a world full of men trying to impress, the one who chooses to lead with emotional depth becomes the one she can't forget. You said? Expand key point 4 into a 500-word SEM. There comes a moment in every connection when a woman isn't looking for a man to impress her, she's looking for a man she can feel. And the truth is, desire isn't created through pressure, persuasion, or performance. It's created through presence, authenticity, and the subtle kind of confidence that doesn't demand attention, but simply earns it. When you stop trying to be the man you think she wants, and instead allow yourself to become the man you truly are, something powerful shifts, not just in the dynamic, but within you. Because women don't fall for perfection, they fall for truth. They fall for a man who knows what he stands for and refuses to abandon himself just to gain approval. A man who can say what he feels without the fear of being misunderstood. A man who doesn't follow the script society hands him, but writes his own narrative based on purpose, integrity, and emotional clarity. That kind of authenticity is rare, and exactly because it is rare, it becomes deeply attractive. It signals depth, it signals substance, and it signals a kind of emotional freedom that invites her to relax and be real with you in return. A woman can sense immediately when a man's presence is grounded rather than performative. She can feel when you're showing up as your whole self. Not polished, not edited, not strategically curated, but fully, honestly, and unapologetically you. And that presence has a ripple effect. It dissolves tension, breaks through emotional barriers, and creates an environment where connection isn't forced but flows naturally. Authenticity opens doors that charm and tactics never could. It creates a level of emotional safety that allows attraction to deepen into something meaningful. But here's what's truly important. Being authentic doesn't mean being unfiltered or careless. It means being intentional, aware, and willing to take full ownership of who you are. It's the quiet courage of saying, "This is me. This is my heart, my truth, my essence, and I'm not afraid to live from that place." That courage inspires respect. It commands attention without force, and it gives a woman permission to show up with the same level of honesty. In a world where so many people are performing, the person who chooses authenticity becomes unforgettable. And when you pair authenticity with self-respect, something extraordinary happens. You begin to attract women not because you're chasing, convincing, or proving, but because your presence naturally resonates with the right ones. You stop trying to win someone who isn't aligned with you. You stop negotiating your worth or shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. Instead, you become the man whose energy speaks before he does. The man whose confidence isn't loud but deeply felt. The man who attracts not through effort but through essence. At the end of the day, authenticity is the most powerful form of magnetism you will ever possess. It's not a strategy, it's a way of living. And the moment you choose to show up as your truest self, you stop trying to be wanted and start becoming irresistible in the most genuine way. Because when a man stands fully in his truth, the right woman will always feel it, and she will always find her way to him.